Now, you Multiple Israeli attacks on Yemen's capital over the course of a week, exacting a significant toll.
We announce the martyrdom of the warrior, Ahmed Ghalib al-Rahawi, the Prime Minister of the Change and Development Government, along with a number of his ministers.
A blow to one of Israel's persistent enemies. Since the beginning of the war in Gaza, the Houthis have attacked Israel in solidarity with Palestinians, firing missiles and drones into Israeli airspace and attacking cargo ships in the Red Sea. Israel's defense minister described these strikes on the group's leadership as an unprecedented, crushing blow and warned the fate of Yemen is the same as the fate of Tehran, and this is only the beginning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once described the Houthis as the last arm in Iran's axis of evil, a reference to its continued attacks after Israeli blows to the fighting power of Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Despite its isolation and these fresh losses to its leadership, the Houthis are insisting they'll continue the fight.
Israel's bombing and brutal aggression will not shake the stance of the Houthi armed forces and the Yemeni people.
In Gaza City, another strike kills at least 7 Palestinians and injures dozens more. Hamas's masked spokesman, Abu Ubaidah, reported to be among them. Hundreds of Palestinians are now, again, fleeing the city for Gaza's south, as Israel announces it's in the initial stages of its widely condemned plan to occupy the city. The distant killing in Yemen having no impact on the course of this war. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
We promise to God, to dear Yemeni people and the families of the martyrs and wounded, that we will take revenge and we will turn the wounds into a victory. We call on people around the world to stay away and not to deal with any assets belonging to the Zionist entity. And the chance is still there for settlers to return to their countries. And to all companies present inside the occupation entity, my last advice to them is to leave before it's too late.
Yemen's Houthi rebels claim they struck an oil tanker with a missile. The attack came just days after their prime minister was killed in an Israeli strike. Israel is warning that it will continue to target the Iran-backed group. In Yemen, however, there is rising anger as thousands mourned and the conflict spirals farther out of control.
The waters of the Red Sea just grew more perilous. Yemen's Houthi rebels have confirmed a missile strike on a tanker, signaling they remain defiant despite losing top leadership in a deadly Israeli strike. The Iran-backed rebels who sank 2 tankers in July said they targeted the Liberian-flagged Scarlet Ray, claiming a direct hit. The UK Maritime Trade Operations say that the attack missed its target. Israeli warplanes killed the Houthis' prime minister and senior officials in Sana'a. The assassination sent shockwaves through Yemen, with vast crowds filling the streets for funerals. Images of mourners, banners and gunfire in the air highlighted how the Houthis are rallying their base, framing the attack as both a loss and a call to arms.
Through this crime, the enemy wanted to pressure the Yemeni people into easing its position, but it will face stronger resistance on the military, political, and popular fronts. The Yemeni people cannot be deceived, nor are they afraid. We do not fear martyrdom.
Israel has been striking Houthi positions for months, vowing to dismantle the group's ability to threaten shipping lanes and regional stability. The Houthis insist their missile and drone strikes are part of their campaign to support Palestinians in Gaza. The Red Sea, one of the world's busiest maritime arteries, is now a flashpoint. Shipping firms are rerouting vessels, fearing more missile and drone attacks. West Asia stands at a knife's edge. With the Houthis striking tankers, Israel intensifying its air campaign, and Gaza still burning, the lines of conflict are widening. What began as a proxy war is now threatening global trade, energy supplies, and regional security, with no respite in sight. Bureau Report, Beyond World is One.
İsrail gemilerine limanlarımızı kapattık.
Breaking news from Ankara. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has announced sweeping new measures against Israel, declaring that Turkey has fully cut off trade and transport links with the country. Speaking at an extraordinary session of parliament on Friday, Fidan told lawmakers that Turkey has closed its ports to Israeli ships and will not allow Turkish vessels to enter Israeli ports. He went further, stating that container ships carrying weapons and ammunition bound for Israel will not be permitted into Turkish ports, and Israeli airplanes will no longer be allowed to fly through Turkish airspace. These remarks came as Fidan underlined Turkey's position as the only country that has taken such comprehensive action to sever trade with Israel, a move that dramatically raises Ankara's political and economic pressure on Tel Aviv. Turkey has been one of Israel's fiercest critics since the beginning of the war in Gaza, repeatedly accusing the Israeli government of committing genocide against Palestinians, charges Israel strongly denies. Over recent months, Ankara has not only condemned the military campaign but also urged the international community to take action, calling for sanctions, accountability measures, and a halt to international support for Israel's offensive. Earlier this year, Turkey officially suspended all trade with Israel, and now the measures announced by Fidan mark a significant escalation, moving from economic sanctions to restrictions in both maritime and aviation sectors. According to reports, Turkish port authorities had already begun quietly enforcing parts of these restrictions. Sources told Reuters that shipping agents have been asked to provide letters confirming that vessels are not connected to Israel and are not carrying any military or hazardous cargo destined for the country. In addition, Turkish-flagged vessels are now formally banned from docking at Israeli ports. These steps effectively isolate Israel from a key regional trade partner and reflect Ankara's determination to distance itself entirely from Israeli commerce. Fidan's announcement was made before a packed parliament, where the session was convened specifically to address Israel's attacks in Gaza. His remarks reinforce Turkey's role as one of the most outspoken critics of Israel on the international stage, particularly under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government, which has consistently positioned itself as a defender of Palestinian rights. The Israeli government has not yet issued a response to the announcement. However, the decision is expected to fuel further debate in global diplomatic circles, as Turkey is now leading the push for stronger international measures against Israel's actions in Gaza. With these bold steps, Ankara has not only reshaped its bilateral ties with Israel, but also raised the stakes in the wider international response to the ongoing conflict.
Russia launched a barrage of over 500 drones and missiles into Ukraine overnight into Wednesday morning, according to Ukraine's Air Force, with explosions reported across western parts of the country. Russia, meanwhile, launched 502 attack and decoy drones alongside 24 missiles in the latest overnight attack, Ukraine's Air Force said in a Telegram post, adding that the defending forces downed 430 drones and 21 missiles. The barrage of drones and missiles targeted several locations across Ukraine. Local authorities reported explosions in the western regions of Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Lutsk. In fact, the firefighters tried to extinguish a large-scale blaze at a garage complex and clear the debris after Russian strikes. The head of Kiev's city administration has said at least one drone crashed in the Ukrainian capital as well. The strikes come as the Russian foreign minister details Moscow's terms once again amid the war with Ukraine. He underscores the need to recognize new territorial realities, saying that a new system of security guarantees for Moscow and Kiev must be formed. Reiterating Moscow's continued opposition to Ukraine joining the NATO, Lavrov named 3 other preconditions for lasting peace, including eradicating the underlying causes of the conflict, and this includes threats to Russia's security that arose in the wake of NATO's expansion and attempts to drag Ukraine into NATO. Lavrov said that Ukraine should be guaranteed a neutral, non-aligned, non-nuclear status. Whereas Ukraine says it is not for Russia to decide what Kiev can or cannot join, while NATO says that Russia can have no veto over membership of the alliance, which was formed in 1949 to counter the threat from the Soviet Union. And as the Russia-Ukraine war rages on, the German Chancellor has ruled out the deployment of German troops to Ukraine before the implementation of a ceasefire. Listen to this.
He is a war criminal. He is perhaps the most serious war criminal of our time, the one we currently see on a large scale. And we simply need to be clear about how to deal with war criminals. Leniency has no place here.
On the 14th of July, Donald Trump set a 50-day deadline for Putin to get to the negotiating table with the Ukrainian President WW3 Zelensky. The deadline passed on September 2nd, with no sign of a meeting between the two leaders. To stay up to speed with the latest news,
to South America now, and the rising tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. Officials in Washington sending several U.S. warships to the southern Caribbean, and now there are growing questions about what it's all for. In Venezuela's capital, leader Nicolás Maduro putting his military on display, accusing the United States of preparing an invasion. Maduro saying the U.S. wants to colonize Venezuela, to break it into pieces and steal its riches. That rhetoric in response to a major development from the Pentagon, mobilizing U.S. Navy warships and thousands of personnel off Venezuela's coast. The goal, according to the U.S., is to confront the drug cartels operating in the region.
And the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice.
The Trump administration doubling the reward for Maduro's arrest to $50 million, accusing him of being the head of the Cartel de los Soles, responsible for trafficking fentanyl-laced cocaine into the U.S., an allegation Maduro has denied.
The DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself.
The White House also designating that cartel an international terrorist organization. That accusation echoed by Ecuador, Paraguay, Argentina, and other countries, adding to the pressure inside Venezuela, after widespread claims that Maduro ignored last year's election results and clung to power. All of that comes after Venezuela's political crisis and economic collapse caused what may be the largest mass migration in the Americas in recent history. Nearly 8 million people forced to leave that country, many coming here to the U.S.
Venezuela has been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country. They emptied out, you don't know this, but they emptied out their prisons in Venezuela, and they emptied them out into the United States of America, and that's part of the problem we have.
Sense of what the U.S. policy or what you're trying to achieve with the aircraft carriers, or the boats, I should say, in near Venezuela, and also the boat that you mentioned yesterday where 11 people were killed. What was found on that boat, and why were the men killed instead of taken in?
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. There was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit. Obviously, they won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape. They're going to say, let's not do this. We have to protect our country, and we're going to. Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country. Many of them, Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They're gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country. They emptied out, you don't know this, but they emptied out their prisons in Venezuela, and they emptied them out into the United States of America. And that's part of the problem we have. We're getting them out. We're getting them out rapidly, but it's caused a tremendous problem. And Pete and all of the people that are working very hard to rectify the stupidity of the Biden administration, allowing these people to pour into our country with open borders. We are paying a big price as a country for the incompetence of the Biden administration. But think of it. Opened up prisons, drug dealers, drug lords, everything coming out of Venezuela. They said, and we said, we're not going to put up with it anymore. So Venezuela has been one of the worst actors in the whole group, and we have a group of pretty bad actors.
Today, the imperialism is launching a new attack. It is not the first, nor will it be the last. It is just another attack, and Venezuela stands firm, and I say to you, Venezuela will continue standing with serenity, firmly and strong faith in victory and in peace.
Chinese 人民解放军始终是党和人民完全可以信赖的英雄部队。全军将士要忠实履行神圣职责，加快建设世界一流军队，坚决维护国家主权、统一、领土完整，为实现中华民族伟大复兴提供战略支撑。同志们好！
We should not forget, our need to increase defense investment and production is in response to the threats we face. Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine is the most obvious example of that threat. But the threat will not end when this war does, nor is the challenge limited to Russia. China, Iran and North Korea pose challenges individually and as a result of the cooperation. Only look at the pictures from Beijing the last couple of days and the hand-holding. They are increasing their defense industrial collaboration to unprecedented levels. They are preparing for long-term confrontation, and as I said earlier, the challenges we face are lasting. So we must be prepared. Of course, we have a real advantage in our unity and in the NATO alliance.